everybody. There, let's try that. Everyone's unmuted. Gentlemen, how are you? Good morning.
Doing good.
Excellent.
How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Dave, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Up
Excellent.
in Portland, the smoke's finally clearing, so that's the good
awesome.
news.
Right on. That's a good sign for sure. The Bay Area is kind of been that way for the last couple of days, which is such a nice change for sure. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you all so much for being here for another episode of BAS Bytes Live. You'll notice that we have a new guest, which is fantastic, and I'm not in my shed, which is unusual for me. So if my video's a little pixelated, I apologize, but it's okay. That's what live stream is all about. So before we get kicked off today, I really want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us live. It's really great to have you here. We've got a fun topic. It's going to be a blast, and then I'll let the guests here introduce themselves in just a second. But definitely feel free, as you're on the live, as we're talking and having conversations and getting through anything, post questions you have in the comments. Say hi to us. Drop a funny quip. Whatever you want to do, just please engage. We love having conversations here. That's the whole point of the live stream. As we're talking about Sassy is Sassy, it'd be great to have some conversation, some questions from you. And if you're curious about anything, or if we can help you with something, definitely let us know. And on that note, why don't we get started? Matt, you want to kick things off?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. I'm Matt Okuma. I'm a systems architect at Cisco. Work on the Bay Area Select team, supporting large commercial accounts up here in the Sacramento area. So looking forward to the very, very relevant conversation here today on SD-WAN and Sassy.
Excellent. Mr. Gridley, our special guest of the day.
A guest, I don't know how special, but thank you. So I'm Dave Gridley, SD-WAN specialist that covers from, I just said it too, dang it. No, I cover from basically the Bay Area up through Alaska, focused on SD-WAN. And that, of course, is continuing to evolve. So Sassy is now the term that encompasses some of SD-WAN. So I'm like a access cloud security SD-WAN Sassy guy at this point in time. So
you should just put hashtag
plays
Sassy
into my
like
strengths
your
of not having to.
Or something.
Exactly. Just acronym soup. Keep it going, right?
It wouldn't be a fantastic Cisco technology if we didn't have more acronyms for things. Let's just be honest.
Fair enough.
Right on.
Cool. And
go ahead, Dave. I was just gonna say, as we're kind of kicking the day off, like we put up on the title for the stream that Sassy is Sassy, and I know that there's always these industry terms that get floated around every calendar year. Gartner or Forrester or IDC or pick an analyst group comes up with some new thing that sounds awesome. What is that? So we thought thankfully Dave brought this up for us, and we thought it might be kind of timely because we're all kind of talking about it internally. We've got a lot of clients that we are working with that bring the conversation up, or their businesses are considering the concepts behind Sassy. So what we thought we'd do today is give Dave a chance to kind of talk to us through a bit about what the heck does it even mean? And then we can just have a conversation about why that's important to you, and then just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I think one of the fun things, Jeff, you mentioned is it's not an acronym that Cisco came up with. It's one that Gartner came up with. So it has a little bit nicer to not have to take so many darts for it being something that's too close to SaaS or another acronym we have in what it is. And in true cloud fashion, it means a lot of different things. So my job recently seems like it's kind of demystifying and simplifying what this Sassy thing means. And really what I've heard from customers on why people want to adopt it, if I can simplify it down, it's just, hey, what can we move to be more of a cloud service from a traditional network or security service? So a lot of times that just comes down in our pike to be a umbrella or SIG Essentials conversation where it's a completely cloud deliver security platform. And how does that connect to the control points, which is the network, where I come into play from an SD-WAN perspective, also cloud delivered. So to me, it's just kind of taking those network services and the kind of the thick branch of different things that you need out there, grooming the traffic and moving it up towards the cloud. So again, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of conversation behind that. It turns into multiple hours of let's dive into it. But to me, that's my keep it simple, high level. So, and Matt, I know you've had a couple of these conversations with me. Are you seeing a similar kind of high level explanation of it?
Yeah. I think what's driving it definitely is that we're seeing more users, more devices, more applications, and just data located outside the normal enterprise, the normal data center. So, existing security models kind of fall short, and you need the ability to enforce your security and your policies and secure where that data is being accessed from, closest to the edge where the users are going and accessing that data. So I think that's what's driving this market, and I think now Cisco's definitely positioned in the right spot and way ahead of a lot of people, just because of our investments in our cloud delivered security platforms like Umbrella, CloudLock, Duo for identity, things like that, and really being able to tie those into our platforms is, we're right there, and we can actually deliver this SASE architecture or secure access at the edge today, which is pretty exciting.
So I'm really curious now that we're so I'm glad you defined it, the actual acronym, Matt, which is perfect, and I appreciate the overview, Dave. So you guys talked about a lot of concepts there related to sort of the cloud edge, network edge. Can you guys talk a bit more about the details of what actually makes up what is being called SASE? Like, what are the more technical components of that, and then maybe a bit more about how those actually are supposed to work, kind of how it relates to what a business needs.
Yeah, and if I could flip that slightly, go the other direction. I know we talk a lot about what is it, why do people want it, why are they asking for it, what is the need, the business need people are asking for when it comes to SASE. I think one of the more relevant things I hear from folks right now is consolidation, as well as how do we deploy this stuff. There's a lot of complexity to that, and moving things to a cloud delivered service. A lot of the times it's, hey, let's point a tunnel or something to this cloud delivered service. Everything can be configured in the cloud from your home, from your work from home situation, from people and devices that are going every which way. So there's a lot of flexibility moving to that cloud delivered SASE-like model, which organizations are saying, hey, this is something that will help us adapt to what we don't know. Are we going back to work? Are we going to have a new type of work? Are people moving everywhere? Are there new devices that are coming out that we're going to have to adapt to? So that's kind of their, let's get ahead of that tech debt curve and say we're ready for wherever we have to connect from and to, from devices and cloud or data center, et cetera. So that's really where the business why comes into this, more so than just saying, hey, here's a cool widget, let's implement it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And it sounds a lot like, I mean, not to break it down into too simple terms, but it sounds a lot like it's sort of about, as complex as it can be, it's sort of about enabling a business to really have more flexibility in where those like people are connecting from and where their workloads actually exist, because you're able to, it goes back to something an IT or a security manager years ago that I worked kind of alongside a previous company used to talk about and he was a little progressive even for our company at the time, was like the more security we can add, the more flexible we can be with where people are at, where we put things, because we know that we're protecting the things. So we're not so concerned about, are you running it in a cloud? Are you letting a person work from home? Are you letting them work at a Starbucks? Like, we don't worry so much about it because we already know that we have the controls in place. It's when you don't have those layers of either network control, like from SD-WAN, or some other sort of security based like cloud offering, what have you, and you're not sure how they're getting protected. And I don't mean this is just a work from home or a remote work thing, but it seems like it allows you a framework from us putting security and controls in the places that are necessary so that you can be more flexible with whatever your business actually needs.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I
Right
think
on.
the other part that you're throwing out or asked a question around was kind of the individual components that put this together. And I think that's something that's continuing to grow and evolve, where SASE is a new term, and it's what we would say is, kind of an architecture of a paradigm shift to that cloud delivered service, and what those cloud delivered services are and how you secure remotely and how you connect remotely does have a lot of different components in it that are going to continue to mature also. So I think, a lot of people in the industry, if they're looking at this right, are saying we're just at the beginning of defining what this looks like and what pieces and parts make this a workable solution for a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And from our standpoint, it's kind of, let's build this on how are we connecting the apps, the people, the devices. That's where SD-WAN comes into play, and why I'm often at the first part of the conversation here, but then it's how do we do it securely, like you said, without caring where people are connecting from. Are they at home? Are they at an office, a Starbucks? And having that kind of security middle tier, if you will, which is another term I hear a lot as I start talking about this, is the middle mile, right? And that's something that's coming up just about every. Okay. And it's one that I hadn't heard a lot of before also, but it is that connection from, hey, we manage everything down at the access layer to our routers, to our edge, right? Sassy being secure edge. And then we're connecting to the cloud. On that path, there's a lot of different things that could be in there, from the service provider to a colo to a service or a SaaS service or a SASE service also, that are kind of grooming your traffic, securing your traffic, et cetera. So that middle mile has a lot of kind of players starting to pop up in there. And that is also between, I'd say, cloud to cloud and cloud to data center, cloud to colo. So a lot of partnerships evolving, which is where I think I've seen a lot of our strengths are, yes, we already have colo partnerships. Yes, we're already working with AWS and Azure and Google from a very tight partnership perspective, not just that we can put a device out there. So those end states where your customers have data, but also those middle mile kind of considerations all work into Sassy, which again, it's like, okay, now you just took something really simple, Gridley, and you turned it up into now we have all these different providers all fighting for different space. So yeah, it is a journey for sure.
Totally.
People always make fun of me at Cisco saying it's a journey, because that's just about everything we have in the IT world.
IT in general is a journey. I mean, technology just overall is a journey. Let's just be honest.
Absolutely.
Some of the things I look at when I think of this, which are pretty cool, because when I think of a normal customer's network architecture, it was always security services were in the data center. So, if your users needed to get to the internet, you would obviously filter and control the access to keep it safe and acceptable access. You would do that. You would have some level of firewalling to protect them. You would try to enrich their data and their traffic flows with threat intel. And what we've really done is just taken those services and made them into a cloud delivered service, including the firewall, cloud delivered firewall, a secure web access gateway, our DNS security, plus cloud broker, so our CASB, cloud lock, and really stitch those all together so that it doesn't really matter if the user is on network, off network, or coming in SD-WAN. Those services are still available to connect to no matter where they're at, and able to leverage them as a service, which is pretty unique offering. And I think it's pretty exciting. Users have been asking for this stuff. There's no more maintaining 4, 5, 6 different things on-prem. We take care of all that for you, but we're still maintaining the same level of compliance and policy that could be already in place on-prem. It could just now exist in both places for various different types of access into your network.
Matt, would you say
that one's?
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
All you, Jeff.
Awesome. I know that as you say all that, I know that there's you cover or you support clients sort of in a number of different industries, and I guess I'm curious from your perspective. Everything you made the comment that a lot of customers have been asking for these sorts of things for some period of time now, a while, to be honest. What would you say are the top like as we're starting to roll out, or I shouldn't say roll out, but as Cisco is starting to codify the technologies that we sell and support that fall under what we call Sassy, what would you say is probably the top 1 or 2 things that people have really been asking a lot for, that I think that we have and we can really wrap under that banner?
Yeah, I think the cloud delivered firewall is a big one. That's very unique, as well as just very feature rich secure web proxying or gateway, being able to control the user's access granularly to the internet and filter based off of your policies. Those are 2 that I think have been a big ask, but also having those services share information and threat intel across them all, not just, I could go, there might have been some secure web gateways out there, but it's a single product. It's not a platform approach where we have all these different layers that we can leverage on the umbrella platform and tie them together to share information. And that's where you really enrich the data that's coming in and make it more more useful and more relevant to identifying threats and securing your policies. And you're not managing different platforms, different things. It's sort of a single solution sharing information. So it's a very platform-based approach, which I think customers appreciate.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so before we kind of continue, because we got about 10 or so minutes left in the normal time frame for our stream, I did want to pause for a second because we've got a number of people joining us this time on the stream, which is awesome. And I just want to say thank you for everybody who's joining us live, or if you're catching this later on, we appreciate you being here too. If you have questions or comments, or just want to tell us how amazing Dave and Matt are on the stream, clearly, feel free to put those in the comments. We'd love to see them. We'll get them. We'll talk about them. If, like I said, if you have questions on these technologies or you just want to prod us a little bit more, definitely feel free, and we'll get to those. And if you're catching this later on, just add to the comments, and we'll come back and check in on you a little bit later. So Matt, you something you just brought up there that I found that I really wanted to dive into a bit is, having that sort of like, I don't really want to call it the single pane of glass because that's not really what it is, but having that central place that all these things actually work together, and the platform idea, I think that's been a long time coming just in general. It's no longer, and it can no longer be, a bunch of disparate technologies that have just been stitched together, and you hope that as you look through each one, they're sharing data, but you still have to look at it as an administrator and say, well, I'll manually correlate this dashboard of interesting information with this dashboard and a different web interface. And it sounds like there's a big opportunity there too to like bring a lot of that information through APIs or other programmability options as well, either into something that we already have, or maybe a third-party tool someone's using. I mean, for either of you, have you heard a lot about that, like in the whole idea of controller-based networking, or the idea of like bringing that data someplace else, or doing more with the fact that you have an API or have these programmability options with something like a platform overall that Sassy is supposed to be?
That a matter
It's either
of
one.
me.
Totally either one of you guys.
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah. No, I think that the programmability is definitely interesting. You kind of talked about APIs, open. I know there's a number of folks out there in the industry that focus a lot on that. The DevNet side of the house, the NetOps, SecOps house side. So that Jeff, I know you kind of sent out a thing earlier this week with our internal DevNet team that was doing hey, how do you get started with SD-WAN APIs and what does that look like? And I think that to me adds a lot of power and a lot of kind of freedom above and beyond what the kind of interface is doing, the platform is doing on its own, because it is tying to the rest of your infrastructure, right? Its infrastructure is code type thing. So I've seen a handful of customers saying this is one of our top priorities, and still kind of learning and diving into what that means, right? Where one of the biggest things that I think is a Cisco differentiator is we have that API programmability kind of methodology across almost all of our platforms that I've seen. So you can have a kind of common infrastructure, above that, where some of the, other niche players, it's not a big focus of theirs to continue developing and working and programming on top of the platform. So that was one of the big takeaways I took from that session was, hey, we have a team of folks that their sole goal is to improve that software development kit, to improve the APIs, to continue to open access to those. And that's their goal, because all they're doing is demoing and adding functionality on top of it. And to me, and again, I'm speaking just on the SD-WAN side, not Sassy. I think that's one of the key building blocks of that story you're talking about, software defined and programmability.
Yeah, totally true. Matt, did you have something you wanted to throw in there too?
No, it's pretty. He hit it right on the head. That's exactly how I see it as well.
Yeah, and it's Dave, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you both know, and others probably do too, that I've been a huge advocate of, the whole idea of like the DevOps, or not so much that term, but more of like leveraging programmability and the whole idea of the art of the possible. Like, what is possible now that you have some kind of open and extensible API that you can call into and pull data from, take that data to some other platform, correlate the information together. Like it just, to your point, Dave, we have these products, and they are products. We have dashboards and interface and all these things. At the end of the day, though, the power isn't in those. It's in what they can do for you. And what really gains you a lot of strength, I think, as a network administrator, more often not, somebody in DevOps or in DevSecOps or what have you, whatever role you happen to be in, is using those APIs, whether you're a coder or not, and bringing the data together, either into a separate product or making them work together. And we've already started doing that with most of our products anyway. Like you look at, going to the APIs that SD-WAN, our SD-WAN product through Viptel already has. Our Meraki SD-WAN version of the same thing already has its open APIs, and there's a ton that you can do with those too. Simple things you can automate to more complex things, ICE, through its PX Grid and all these other technologies we have, SecureX now for our security side, they all have some form of API that you can pull data from and get information to, and you can then create automations to make them go do the things you need them to do. It doesn't just have to be about the interface that Cisco created. It can be about, well, yeah, you have that, but I know I can do these other things. I'll connect my automation tool to what you're already doing and just tell your products to go do what I need it to do, which, not to brag too heavily, but I think we're one of the few companies in the industry that can actually do that and is doing that really, really well.
Yeah, I think one of the fun things you brought up, and I'm a rookie at best and probably not even on the rookie scale of programmability and APIs, but I've sat through some cool classes, and one of our common buddies was just texting us before this, who spends a lot of time doing this NetOps, DevOps type stuff. One takeaway I got from those sessions, and then also the session we watched this week, is after you dig into the APIs and see what type of information you can get, you see these people just kind of spur these like ideas that isn't just about managing the network, it's about troubleshooting. Like you have your standard troubleshooting procedures, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I can pull so much information onto my own, however I want to consume it. What could I do to figure out how problems, are arising? And like one example that came up was just something like grabbing the temperature sensors on a device and saying, no, this is overheating. Who would have thought of that when something continues to reboot and they aren't able to grab AC, HVAC situations in a remote site? And I'm kind of, paraphrasing one area that I saw somebody get excited about, but that's how they troubleshot a device. It got hot during the day when the sun went through a window in one of their closets, and the device would reboot every day around 2 or 3 o'clock. And the only correlation they could figure out, it was only on hot sunny days. When the clouds came over, it wouldn't do that. And I'm like, how did you figure that out? And they're like, I'm a DevOps guy. I figured out that this was available in here. What, alarms are going off. And I started pulling them, and just seeing people get excited about stuff like that is kind of fun for me. So
I totally agree. And I think I think we should do another stream on that whole idea of like how to take giving people who are not typically network admins or what have you access, now that they have the access to all these technologies through an API, and they can get in there. Folks who are not typically, networking people are going to think about these problems in very different ways than the three of us would think of them, which is, I think, a really good thing, because that's how you get to a place like you just described. Someone's going to solve a problem in a unique way that the three of us would have never considered, because we just don't think about it that way. At the end of the day, we still kind of live in an echo chamber of network administration or security administration or whatever, and giving someone else a chance to look at it from a very different perspective can be really amazing.
Absolutely. Right. I think you brought up another challenge, Jeff, is we sometimes do think of it from a network perspective, and then security teams think of it from a security perspective, and cloud teams think of it from a cloud perspective. And, we always talk about these worlds kind of converging, but I'd say that's probably one of my top things with customers is bouncing around between teams and them saying, okay, we can only take this so far with the network team. We have to tap the skill set we all need. We need to tap and use, so they're learning together. And in my mind, when you're learning together, understanding together, that's where all of a sudden they start saying, okay, maybe we can work together on this stuff without having to say, stay in your sandbox, you stay in your sandbox. That's kind of one of the big unifiers I've seen with some of these conversations.
So true. So true. Well, listen, we're near the end of our stream for the day. These 30 minutes always go so fast. Before we wrap, though, Matt, anything you want to leave the audience with? We still have a really good audience today. Thank you all so much. And a couple folks did chime in. Mr. Clayton said, great stuff. Nice work, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate it. And Carl was on, said, Dave and Matt are the best. That is all, which I think is totally cool.
We're going to have Carl on next. That's who we're going to have.
There we go. I love
Talk
it.
DevOps.
Well, Matt, I'll turn it to you for any closing thoughts before we get wrapped up for the day.
Yeah, I think, by Gartner making this, and coming out and defining it, I think will be of interest for people to definitely learn more about, investigate. And I encourage you to reach out to us or your Cisco team and go deeper on it, because I think Cisco's very well positioned and ahead of everyone else. And I think we can really, change the game on your infrastructure for sure as it relates to this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, how about you? Any want to do before we drop off?
Matt, Jeff, thanks for having me on. I think it's a fun conversation for me. I get passionate about it and have lots of internal just chat sessions because